So we've got Union Kitchen Jack's Grill, Passarella. There's some other things that we're talking about right now. Did about $3.5 million in total revenues second year. That's how you grow organically. That's how you are able to do 2, then 3, then 4. So.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Vision Podcast. I am your host, Dylan Garcia, where we are trying to figure out who is in your field, what do they like, and ultimately, what makes them so special. Today, we got Mr. Paul Miller of Great Plate. He owns 12 restaurants in the greater Houston area, so he kind of knows what he's talking about. But welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me. Glad to be here.
Of course, and I think the audience listening, if y'all ever want to open a restaurant, or maybe you have a restaurant but you kind of want to expand, Mr. Paul Miller is a great example. He's been doing it for over 20 years. So hopefully y'all guys can take some insight of what he's talking about and apply it to y'all's career. But let's get this thing started. So
awesome.
The first thing I want to get started with is like passion. And I know that passion is just kind of a generic thing, but going into the food industry, so you can't only be like focused on food. There's got to be something else that animates you. And so you see a lot of people burning out in the industry. I know I've been on it for 2 years, and I've gotten kind of burned out. But what is your kind of, and I've used this before, but like your reason greater than reality?
Change, adaptation. I got in the industry, honestly, I graduated college in 96, and I started training with Pappas, Papados, Papacitos, Pappas Brothers Steakhouse. They're big time here in town. And one of the things that really impressed me about that organization was they do a little bit of everything. They've got a refrigeration company. They've got landscaping. They've got they had a fishing charter company that they were going out and catching their own fish. So there were so many things that they were doing that I had to kind of compartmentalize and say, what is it that I'm interested in? And do I want to be a restaurateur? Do I want to be, in all these other support industries? Because if you look around town, there's 6 million people in the Houston metro area, right? And we've got a ridiculous number of restaurants, so everybody's got options. So there's all these support businesses around. And I think you have to determine primarily what your passion is. Is it cooking? Is it being in the front of the house and being involved in service? Is it, are you more technical and you want to be on the computer side? Are you, do you want to be creating websites and social media? Do you want to be, doing podcasts and talking about food in restaurants and the places that you want to go? There's so many facets to the industry that you really kind of have to figure that out first. So in my opinion, the way that you do it is you kind of do it all. I'm not great on social media, but I hired a company that is, but I still want to know how to do it. I've done podcasts. I've done interviews. I've talked to the Chronicle. I've done, a lot of those things. And really what I want to do is I want to be in the restaurant talking to the guests. I want, we hire great chefs. We hire great managers. We hire, we've got my director of operations, Doug Wilson, who's, sitting right over here. We've got our corporate chef who just ran out to the restaurants a moment ago. We've got GMs, managers, cooks in every single restaurant. So everybody's got a piece to play, and you got to figure out how you fit into that puzzle. Or, to go back to some, older books that I was reading when I was your age, right. You got to find the right seat on the bus.
And so you mentioned like all the people that you've been hiring. So with that hiring process, because I think personally, people is your most important asset. And so I think if you can find out the people, everything else will take care of itself. So when you interview for these positions, what are you kind of looking for, and that's kind of like sparking to your mind?
That's a lot, man. When somebody walks, one of my mottos is hire for smiles, train for skills, right? If you come in the door and you've got a positive attitude and you've got good energy and I enjoy talking to you, you've got that 5-second likability, I can figure the rest of it out. We'll team you up with the right GM and the right management team to try to get you where you need to be. But if you don't have that smile when you walk through the door, front of the house isn't the place for you, man. Right. You might still have a seat on the bus, but are you going to be working on the cook line? Are you dishwasher? Are you something behind the scenes as opposed to being forward facing towards the guests? I want as many people in the front of the house that work for us smiling as possible. Because when you walk in and you feel that vibe, it's it's immediate.
It is.
Music's probably a little bit too loud at every one of our restaurants. Music's probably a little bit. The lighting is probably a little bit too low at all the restaurants, but that creates a vibe, and that's what we're shooting for.
So when you're interviewing, people can interview well, but a lot of people are found out within a year, 365 days of kind of everything building up, and you kind of find out who that person is after a year or two. So how do you kind of gauge that in kind of like prepping them for over a year and trying to get them more longevity-wise?
Two things that when I was doing an exit interview with the second company that I worked for, and I've really only worked for 3 companies before I started my own, but I was doing an exit interview, and we were sitting down talking, and there were a couple things that he said to me that really have stuck with me for the last, however long I've been doing this, 20 plus years. The first one is 3 weeks, 3 months, 3 years. So when somebody gets hired on and they go through the training process, there's these like forks in the road that they come to where they're going to make a decision. And what he always said was 3 weeks, 3 months, 3 years. You just get through training, you go on the schedule. Do you like this job, right? You're about 3 weeks in. Then you're kind of starting to learn things. You're creating regulars. You're getting into the flow, or you're not. That takes about 3 months. Right. And then if you make it past that 3 months, it's 3 years. Now, I've probably gone through a promotion. I might be a bartender now. I've learned a lot more about the restaurant. And then at 3 years, you have to make a decision. What's my next step? I'm a server, bartender, possibly do some key shifts. Am I ready to go into full-fledged management, or do I want to go off and try something new? So that's kind of the flow, and it's really proven itself to be true. So that's the first thing. And then the other thing is it's hire slow, fire quick. So if I'm interviewing you and I have references and I have a lot of information on this resume that I'm looking at, I need to slow down a little bit, take the time, get to know you. We do a 3-part interview process. Typically, either depending on how high the position is, whether it's a GM or a top end manager, or if it's just somebody coming out of college and they're starting out at the bottom end, that's when the GM does the interview, or Doug, our director of operations, or our chef will do a first interview. They like them. They send them out for a work with or a side by side. They go to a restaurant. They work with the manager for 4 or 5 hours. And we just see how they are. Are they interactive with the guest? Are they helping the servers out? Are they, cleaning up at the dish table? Are they standing around with their hands in their pockets? Or are they going out and being active in the restaurant? So if that's the case, yes, then we move them on to the last portion of the process, which is the interview with me. And really, my interview is not that long. Doug will sit down with somebody for, 2.5 hours, try to get to know them, where you're from, all this kind of stuff. By the time they've made it through the first 2 portions of the process, now it's, do I feel like I have a connection with this person, and will this person have a future in our company? Because I'm not just trying to hire somebody for a year. I don't need Band-Aids. What I need is, we're continuing to buy restaurants, we're continuing to build restaurants, we're going to try to grow this company. I don't want to hire somebody in that I'm going to be having to make a tough HR decision on in a year or 2 years. Right. I want somebody who's going to stick. So that's the slow portion, right? Check the references, go through the process, do the 3 interviews. We make an offer. They accept an offer. They come in. If you're not performing in the first 60 days, if you're not excited and doing the job in the first 60 days, right, you're never going to do it. You're never going to get it.
You're not going to survive too. That's the big thing.
You might learn how to do payroll. You might learn how to do inventory. You might learn how to work our computer system and add a key in on our POS, or do any of these kind of things. You might have the technical pieces, but if you don't have that personality piece, if you're not a rock star on the front of the house, then we don't need you. There's other restaurants down the road that'll talk to you, but
there's plenty.
Yeah, we're looking for good personalities and people that want to work with others and be helpful, and like I said, be forward facing.
Right. So, and you referenced a book to me, Charlie Trotter. He's up in Chicago running his business, but he said he has employees kind of interview people that are coming on that he trusts, employees that have been with the company for a long time. And so he said they kind of dig into more of that person because they'll seem more relaxed. And so they'll kind of ask, what animates them besides obviously the talent. your favorite books or movies or your extracurricular activities. That's what's going to show you kind of who that person is more in depth and and like I said, more longevity wise. So would you ever consider picking an employee and kind of saying, hey, will you interview this person for us?
Absolutely. We started, so I think the book that you're referring to is Chocolates on the Pillow Aren't Enough. Really enjoy, so Charlie Trotter is a big time restaurateur, started out small. I think his first restaurant obviously had some success with, but now he's involved in a lot of other things. So there's no way he's going to be able to interview every single person individually. Right. So, I know you've done some other podcasts with some higher ups, and my dad calls them direct reports. So we have a merge meeting here at the office. We call it a merge meeting because we want to merge everyone's thoughts together. It's all my GMs and all my executive chefs, and we do it once a month. Those are the guys that I would consider my direct reports. So they're boots on the ground. They're the ones who are in the restaurant every day. They're the ones that are dealing with the guests directly and the staff and all those kind of things.
And I like that you're bringing them in, because some major CEOs of restaurants, especially if they own a lot, they won't meet with their team on a monthly basis, maybe every other month. And so that kind of shows that you care.
Once a year, heaven forbid, at some big conference that you
exactly.
rent a hotel out and do that whole deal, yeah.
And so that can do a detriment to the team and say, does this guy really even care for us? That's a testament, especially for me, because I was working in the restaurant industry, and to have a boss that actually knows that Mo, he works in Austin, Jewboy Burgers, so he's a really great owner, but him always talking to us shows that, hey, he cares. And so I kind of like that you're bringing everybody in once a month. I mean, that's great, especially how busy you are. So that's kudos to you.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. But we're trying to get to the point to where we have 3 meetings. So 3 different groups coming in once a month. So we've got 1 week that we're going out to the restaurants. We're going out and doing facility reviews. We're talking to the management teams that are there. We're going out and we're actually on site at every single restaurant that we have. Another meeting is kind of what we call key employees. So we've got top employees in several different work groups, maybe the best bartender, maybe the best server. We've got, employees of the month that we vote on every month, that we give them $100, we give them the schedule they want for the week, and we get their, they got their picture up on the wall, which is awesome. So we have all the GMs come in, we have the chefs come in, we also have the chefs come in separately, so we just talk about food, not necessarily financials and scheduling and holidays and all the other things that we talk about. And then we have the key employees come in so that we can sit down and have a conversation with them and say, what are you seeing in the restaurant? What do you like? What do you not like? What would you like to change? And the impact that I really get from that is, you give people an opportunity to air what they're angry about, but then somebody else can say, we're really good at banquets and events. And another restaurant will say, wow, we really haven't done one of those in a long time. What are you guys doing over there? And then they start talking, the GMs start talking, the management teams get together. So the more synergy you have between the restaurants, the better off you are, especially same concepts. So we've got Union Kitchen, Jack's Grill, Passarella. There's some other things that we're talking about right now. So if we buy another concept that has 2 or 3 restaurants, then we're going to bring them into the fold, and that management team comes in and starts, being a part of what we're doing. So, it's just getting people face to face is huge, and I think we really realized that during COVID, doing all these Zoom phone calls and just every other thing. It just talking to my marketing people, my PR, my social media, talking to them in front of a computer screen is completely different than 4 or 5 people being in the same room and working together and saying, man, I just saw that guy get excited about music, right? So I'm going to put you in charge of doing something musically because that's obviously your jam. That's what you want to do. Or, does somebody love cocktails? And you see them kind of perk up when you talk about cocktails, and you don't necessarily see that on a Zoom call, especially if you got a cat picture as your emoji or something, right? So, getting people in the same room and getting the excitement up and the energy is really what the hospitality industry is all about. You don't go, if you go down to Galveston, you don't go to the San Luis because you like the hotel room. You go because you like the pool and the restaurants and the location right on the beach. And everybody's treating you well, Exactly. You don't just go sit in your room for 3 days. So there's always something that somebody's looking for, and the best hospitality people can see that. And determine what that guest wants and treat them well, and they'll come back.
So before you were owner, did you ever chef? Did you have any chef experience? Because I know like some owners, they were a chef and then they finally made their own concept of what they wanted, or on the other hand, you're a really good businessman and you kind of know the numbers and you know how everything's supposed to lay out. But like, what was your route?
I thought I was going to go back to culinary school. So I went to Purdue University. I had a diverse experience there. I went specifically to play football. I played football for 3 years. I wrestled for 2 years, blew out my knee, had some surgery, decided I wasn't going to take the time to try to get back and play my senior year, but I did play rugby. So I not only had NCAA D1 experience, I had club experience. I met a lot of different people. I went in thinking I was going to be in business. So I'm in the school of business, and I went in. I thought I was going to be an engineer. Found out that was not the case very quickly.
They're insane.
That is not my personality. So then I was in business, and then while I was in the business school, I started doing some work over in the hospitality school, which was basically me working in the kitchen, me working in the front, me being involved in all these things. And I'm like, I'm gonna start taking some classes over here, and then, RHIT, which is Restaurant Hotel Institutional Management, became my major. And it was just one of the best things that I could have done. It's still a Bachelor of Science because it's in the business school, but it was a great experience for me. Then when I graduated, I worked for Pappas for a few years, and then I thought, I might go back to culinary school. Maybe I just want to be a chef, and I want to be this chef-driven restaurant. And then the more and more research that I did, I determined, well, I don't want to be the chef at a restaurant. I want to be the owner of the restaurant. Not that a chef can't be an owner, but right. I want to be the owner of the restaurant. I want to have a chef. I want to have a front of the house manager, and then I want to do a second one. Then I want to do a third one. And I had there's a gentleman who's a big wig with a company called Front Burner Concepts. Jack Gibbons. He was one of my first GMs ever, and I was talking to him years later when I opened my first restaurant. And he told me, if people are coming to the restaurant to see you, like they're walking into that restaurant because they want to see Paul Miller, they want to see Dylan Garcia, they want to see this person, you're already sunk. Because as soon as you leave and you go out and do the second restaurant, you go to the third restaurant, hey, where's Paul? I haven't seen him in forever, right? So if somebody's going to see you, you haven't created the right concept, you haven't created the right vibe, you haven't hired the right people. You want to have a mayor of the floor. You want to have somebody in each one of your restaurants that is involved in the neighborhood, and they're involved in the charities, and they're saying hi, and they're kissing babies and shaking hands, and they're doing all that stuff. Because now I want to go to the restaurant to see that person and my favorite server and my favorite bartender. I just happen to be the owner of the company. So when I'm in there, I get to go around and shake hands and say hi to everybody. But like I said, I'm not the person who's in there 50, 60 hours a week that people are going to see. I'm here trying to figure out what the next concept's going to be, or how we can change our menu, or trying to do all those things that are kind of behind the scenes.
So what sets you apart from like having that, hey, I'm looking to go see Paul Miller, because you are a great guy, but like how did you kind of set apart your company for people that want to come in? How did you separate yourself? Because you did say there's tons of restaurants in Houston.
So when I had one restaurant, obviously I'm the GM. I had a chef. It was the two of us that were there every day. I had a cot in my office that I would literally spend the night, right? Because we weren't big enough, or we weren't busy enough for me to have an AM manager and a PM manager and a mid and all this kind of stuff. So it was literally the two of us that were there all the time. We were open lunch and dinner and brunch 7 days a week. So it's just us. So that was an experience that was very valuable. I was young. I was
the trenches.
Yeah, it was. You're doing it, and I did everything. I knew how to cook on every single position up and down the line.
You've done the dirty work.
Yeah, every ingredient. You don't
want to hear it from the other people.
Exactly. If I clean toilets, you clean toilets.
Exactly.
That kind of thing. So, but it was fun, and then we got to the point to where, hey, we're doing pretty well, man. We're making some money. We're putting some money in the bank. We're ready to do a second concept. So if I'm going to go do that, who's going to be the dude here? So we identified a couple people that were already working for us, fortunately, that we were able to promote to manager. And because we had such great regulars at the restaurant, they were super excited to see these guys get promoted, and they wanted to support them. And it was a really good vibe. I'll go back to that word again. Vibe, energy in the restaurant. And they got promoted. They took over. I took a step back. We started construction on the second restaurant. It took us about 2 years to do the second restaurant. So we started construction on the second, and then I would spend my time at Tuck One, TUK, the Union Kitchen, Tuck One, before we were open and after we were closed.
And how much time are you spending per week? Because a lot of people, they say that 72 hours, like they're dedicated to their craft. But how much would you say at the beginning, obviously, like when you're grinding it all out, 72 hours, committing to, like your life to setting 5 years of your life to set up the groundwork for your future. How many hours were you working?
It was a lot. It was a lot. It's 7 days a week. If you're talking about 72 hours, that's 7 days a week, 10 hours a day. Right. That gets you to your number. So it's not, I didn't look at it that way. I just enjoyed it. Like I wanted to be there. Like it wasn't.
I get to do it.
Yeah, I went. Oh shit, man! I gotta go to work again, or I gotta go back over there. Oh man, it was. What's my next event? We did beer dinners with St. Arnold before Brock got so big and sold the company, and he was there. It's like we did some of the stuff that we did with people back then, some of the dinners, and like you would be amazed that we had the brewmaster in the building. We had the owner in the building, and it was just, that's the kind of stuff we do now, trying to find some smaller, companies that are out there, guys that are chasing the dream and willing to work hard. I don't know that I could put that number on it. Then when we did the second restaurant was actually when Doug Wilson came on board, our director of operations. I had tried to hire, he didn't come on as the director right off the bat, but I had tried to hire him at Tuck One, and I couldn't afford him. So we promoted a couple guys from within. We started going in the right direction. We knew we were going to do this second restaurant. So that was when he decided to come on board, because we thought Memorial it was bigger. It was a much larger restaurant, busier restaurant. So he came on board at that point. And, that's kind of what we were talking about. I'm looking for people with longevity. He came in as a GM for us, and now he's the director of operations over all the restaurants and everything that we do. From everything from, insurance and pest control up to, all the HR decisions and things like that. So, it's identifying those kind of people and putting them in the right spot. And that's how you grow organically. That's how you are able to do 2, then 3, then 4. So.
Right. Okay. And so I want to shift over to the funding side of things. So would you say it's harder to start a restaurant today versus, say yesterday? Or, what are your thoughts on that?
I don't think it's harder. It's more expensive, obviously, but the value of the dollar isn't as good as it was way back when. When I did my first restaurant, I wasn't looking for what's called a cold white box, right? A cold white box is so let's say you've got a strip center. It is one part of that strip center. A 25,000 square foot strip center. There's 5,000 square feet right here. We're going to go into that, and it's literally a white box that's got nothing in it. We've done it a lot, but that wasn't 1, 2, or 3. We went into it looking for a business that was operating, that probably wasn't doing as well as what it could be. We determined what it was we were going to do to change that business, bought the business, got our permits, flipped it, and changed it into what we wanted. One of the things about the Union Kitchen and Jack's Grill and, now Passerella, our newest concept, one of the things that we look at is if you go to my bar and you like whiskey or you like vodka and I don't have it on the shelf and you come 2 or 3 times, I'm getting it for you. There's not a corporate office that I have to send an email, and I've been in these companies.
So it's personal.
Yeah, it's you like, I don't know, whatever, some crazy gin that I've never even heard of. I can go source that out, buy it, get it in here, and then you're going to come back because my bartender did that for you. It's not because Paul did it for you. It's because the bartender listened to you, went to the manager, and they said, hey, this person comes in all the time. They really like this. Done deal. So now you have it in. But that's the same thing we did. That's the same thing we did with the menu. That's the same thing we did with the wine list. It's always been that very grassroots sort of approach, and that's the way that we build. I went around. I bought. So Tuck One was an Italian restaurant. It was called Gina's Italian Bistro, and
That was your first one?
That was the first one. Yeah.
So how much did it cost to start up? Because a lot of people think like, oh, I'll put $100,000 in, but that's not even close to what you need. So I mean,
quick story. I went out to family and friends, and so let's say I think my all in on the first restaurant ever. This includes buying new patio tables and chairs and inside tables and chairs and all that kind of stuff, was probably about $300,000, $250 to $300,000, right? So nowadays that's a very minimal investment,
right?
But that was more than I had 10 years ago. It was a hell of a lot more than what I had sitting in the bank. So I went out to family and friends and I said, hey, will you invest? And I got a little bit here, a little bit here, a little bit here. And I sat down with my dad and I told him what I was going to do. And he goes, if you took all this money and you lost it, would these people still like you? And I'm like, oh shit, probably not. Right? Yeah. Whether it's 5,000 from somebody or 50,000 from somebody, would they like you? You're gonna be pissed off. Even if it's 500, you're gonna be pissed off, right?
Losing any money.
So he said, hey, let me invest in you. You do this thing, and then we'll see where it goes. So fantastic. Thank you.
Created a business plan, presented it to him.
That's exactly right. And I put obviously everything I had into it. So it wasn't like Dad looked at me going, hey, here's some money and you can go off and lose it or not, and whatever. It's like you're all in. I took everything that I just earned from, graduated in 96 and this was 2010, this is 2010, excuse me. So I mean, it was every penny that I had to my name. So I'm vested for damn sure. And first day I think we had maybe $1,000 in sales. All day, lunch and dinner.
Right.
And I was actually happy with that. I'm like, this is fantastic. So, again, flash forward 2 years, that restaurant, 3,500 square feet, right on Bel Air Boulevard, did about $3.5 million in total revenues second year.
Oh, wow.
And that was the money that we took, put it aside, went into the second restaurant. Second generation.
So you saved it all? Like, how much did you save for the company, but then also pay yourself? What was like that ratio?
90-10. Wow. 90% saved. It was literally what I had to live on. And I'm eating most of my meals at the restaurant anyway. So it's like, the money that I absolutely needed was there, but because the restaurant, was successful, we were able to do that. You're able to. It was. I thought I was going to open in 1 year, and then I couldn't. We hadn't earned enough money yet, so it took us we put all that money into the second restaurant. Now, you started to see a little bit of. I think I actually paid myself a salary in my fourth year of owning my own restaurants. So
so it took 4 years.
Yeah. So before that, it was disbursements. Okay. So hey, I need X number of dollars for rent. I need X number of dollars for this. So I would kind of look at it and say, all right, at the end of the month, I'm going to write myself a disbursement. Took that money out, spent it on what I needed, wasn't putting money away, none of that kind of stuff. Everything was just going into the next restaurant. And then about the fourth restaurant that we did, which was Ella Boulevard, is when I was able to hire an outside CPA as opposed to somebody that was just helping me with my taxes. So we had a full-time CPA. We were sending all the invoices to them. It was, we went from QuickBooks Enterprise to a full-fledged accounting software, all the stuff that we needed. And that was when they said, all right, now you need to pay yourself a salary. You need to give yourself this number, start putting taxes away, doing all that kind of stuff, as opposed to the disbursement is essentially the same as a bonus. You get taxed at a little bit higher rate, but I didn't want to take any more than what I needed. So then I went on salary, and then obviously we continued on from there, and we've got a few more restaurants now.
So at the beginning, when you get these large sums of money, obviously you got to feel some type of pressure to perform. So how did you kind of manage that, probably at a younger age? How did you manage, look, I got to perform or else I'm basically fucked? So.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's to be honest with you, it wasn't necessarily just about me. Obviously I had a growing family, but it was about my people. Like my first thought is, oh my gosh, I've got, at Tuck One, I think we had at the most, we had maybe 8 or 9 servers. You got 10 cooks, right? Because you're rotating through shifts. I had 2 managers on. Then that was 3,000 square feet. Now you go to 5,000 square feet with a 2,500 square foot patio on Memorial, in the middle of Memorial, which was a completely different neighborhood, right on Memorial Drive between Gessner and Beltway 8. Now we had 50 servers, 25 cooks, 5 bartenders, 6 managers. You've got this totally different thing. So it was less about, necessarily me and what I needed, and more about, I got a lot of people we need to support here. Like, how are we going to make this work? We got to make sure that our percentages are on. We got to make sure everything's in the right place. We still have conversations about this every single merge meeting. Food cost is 30%, labor's 30%, occupancy is about 10%. That includes all your utilities. Then you've got, all these different miscellaneous charges. Marketing and PR is about 1.5%, right? So we go through the P&L, and everything needs to be dialed in for you to be dropping money to the bottom line. And then that money goes to the bank because we want to either buy another company or we want to start another restaurant. So that money doesn't just come out of thin air. You got to be very strict about how you're managing it. And if you don't do it, you see a lot of restaurants close every day. If you're not doing it from day one, then you're in trouble. We've got a bunch of other restaurants now that can support a restaurant that's not doing well, right. But you only give it so long. If a restaurant's not doing great,
you can only help it so much.
Right? Then you need to make it. Then you got to make a tough decision. And the tough decision for us on Tuck One was during COVID. We're going into COVID. It's like March of 2020, and our landlord was not helpful at all. Like, all of my other landlords were fantastic. Hey, you need this. You need a couple months of abatement. We don't know what's going on with all this. We don't know how long people are going to be shut down. I had this one landlord that said, "No, you got a contract. You need to pay me your rent." Wow. And I don't know what's going to happen.
People don't take that into like a customer. Like, certain things happen besides food and besides people, things like that, like COVID happening, and they don't take account for that. And so, and then that's where you saw a lot of people, they folded.
You see great restaurants closing all the time, even now. Now we're post-COVID, but you see restaurants now that'll sign short-term leases. They'll sign a 2, a 3, or a 5-year lease, and they come to the end of it. And they didn't think forward on, we try to lock up a space for about 20 years minimum. And hopefully we have a couple more terms on the backside that are not something we have to negotiate. They're standard extensions, right? So it's a 3% increase for this period of time, or it's a 10% increase for a 5-year term or something like that. So some of these other restaurants that don't do that get to the end of they're successful. They get to the end of their term and they go back to their landlord and go, "Yeah, I want another 5 years." And they're like, "Oh, great. You guys are killing it. I'm going to up your rent by 50%. And they're like, "What? I can't do that. I thought we were friends." Right. And they're like, "Well, we can be friends, but it's business, So a great restaurant has to shut down because they can't afford, you don't want to work 70 hours a week, 72 hours a week just to pay somebody else. You've got to be able to put something in the bank. And I think that's what, I shouldn't say I know that's what a lot of our landlords did, and they looked at us and said, "Hey, this is a successful company. They're doing a good job. They're taking care of our guests. They're good in the community. They take care of the sidewalks out front, and they're good neighbors. So we're gonna work with them." So it was that was good, but the one that didn't, we had to shut it down. And we said, "Hey, listen, we're at the end of our lease anyway. I'm not going to renew. We're going to move on down the road." And it's still vacant, unfortunately. So.
Well, and so back to what you said, you kept saving money for a side, and you kept expanding, and I like that idea that if you're not expanding, you're dying. And so I think a lot of companies and a lot of people need to understand that, and so that just kind of again speaks volume that, hey, you kind of have that grit that I want more, and you have discipline as well, because a lot of people, they'll be satisfied with one restaurant, and obviously they'll be okay with it because that's their morals, but expanding and doing what you're doing, that's great for the company.
And we see it a lot. Doug and I have conversations about this a lot, and especially with Lundy. You'll see somebody in the restaurant, a manager specifically, or even a really good server, and they'll do great, and they'll get to this point, and they're comfortable. Yeah, comfortable. I got what I want. Why do I want to take on more responsibility? Why do I want to take on more? Why do I want to work harder when I'm comfortable with what I have? And you need that in society also. You need people that are going to get out there and they're going to be go-getters and they're going to be leaders. And you also need people that are followers and they want to have a manager and they just want to go to work and they only want to work 40 hours a week or maybe even less. There's a lot of stuff going on right now with you know, 3 days a week off, right? Friday, Saturday, Sunday off, or an alternating day somewhere in the week. Or, you know, I read articles about some of these investment firms in New York were talking about dropping a day, right? So you drop Monday, you drop Friday. There's a lot of activity in the market on Monday and Friday. How do you not work 5 days? How do you not work when the market is open? Like, how do you not work when the restaurant is open? You can't, as a server, you know, as a bartender, you can't make money. You don't make any money when the restaurant's not open. So you've got to be there. You have to do the work. You have to be the go-getter. And, you know, I wish we could find more of those people. We'd be bigger than what we are now if we had more of those people walking through the door.
Right. So, obviously, being a successful man, you know, or what I like to say is you can be a successful man or woman, but you're a boss when you can help people get into your industry. And so, you know, what I mean by that is maybe creating a program for kids to learn or stuff like that. So, you know, have you looked into that, or even go to a school and talk to kids that are passionate about culinary, or going to a culinary school and talking to them? You know, have you ever thought about that, and have you done it?
Yeah, so Purdue's invited me back 2 or 3 times. I've taught an entrepreneurial class. So they have me in for the week. I teach 2 or 3 classes during the course of the week. I just go in and kind of talk. So when you do something like that you don't have an entire semester to go through, right? You're in college, you understand that, you know, they start you out with the basics and you work your way through, and then by the end you look back and go, oh my God, that seems so basic to me. But on day one, that was a lot, right? So a lot of the classes that they have that Purdue University has me do are, here's my story, here's what I did, I graduated from here, wanting to do, you know, I'm sitting where you are.
Living proof.
Yeah, right. And now, you know, here we are 10, 12 restaurants later, food truck, trailer, you know, large events, doing all that kind of stuff. And here's how I did it. And then you kind of get the question and answer for a little while. And then we start digging into more specifics. How long did it take you to get the CPA? How long did it take you to hire that next manager? How long, you know, what are some timeline guidelines that I can look at and say, you know, kind of base some of that on? Because, you know, you also see, there's a story about Outback Steakhouse that they opened up and they were killing it. Everything was great. They were a good price point. They had a good quality product, and then they tried to grow too fast. So they opened all these restaurants all across the country and had to close 3/4 of them. Then they came back and they refocused on the restaurants that were doing well, and then they grew slower, and now they're doing really well again. And I think you kind of see that story over and over and over, because you don't necessarily learn from somebody else's mistakes. You hope you do, right. But you got to learn, you know, you got to learn from your own mistakes. So
I got you. So back to problems within the industry, you know, besides what's going to happen in the kitchen, you just mentioned that, like, the landlord situation, and obviously with contractors, you know, building your restaurant. I just talked to another restaurant owner in Katy, and while I was writing my script for the podcast, but he mentioned that, hey, we went through 3 contractors and it set back our opening dates 6 to 8 months. That kind of screws us all, because we can't let the public know when we're going to open, delays our hiring process. And then when you hire people, they'll leave because they want to work now. So what kind of other situations happen within the restaurant industry that people don't account for, or they get blindsided by?
Man, I think I think you could probably look at every single facet of the industry and identify the pitfalls, right? So if I had a bad real estate agent that put me together with a bad landlord and I signed a bad contract, I'm already in the hole. And to tell you the truth, I probably would have done that because I was so excited about opening my first restaurant, had I not had a little bit of kind of that coaching, teaching from a few different people. And, you know, what I did was I went to go work for Papados, which is part of the Pappas organization. When I left there, I went to go work for Grand Lux Cafe, which is Cheesecake Factory. So it's a publicly traded company. Then I left there to go work for McCormick and Schmick's, which again was private. It was before Tillman bought it. But they had a lot of really good people in the organization. So those are the 3 companies that I worked for multiple years each before I went off and did my own thing. So during that, 96 to 2010, I had a portfolio. I had a You probably don't know what a flip file is or a Rolodex, but I had a Rolodex full of numbers that if I had a question about purchasing or GCs or contracts or any of these things, I could call up and I could ask the questions. But I spent that time not only learning my craft, but also making those connections to where I could ask the question. So it's a college education every single time I do something. You know, we're working on right now, we're getting to the size where we're actually working on contracts with our distributors that are going to bring our prices down, and we're going to be able to get some rebates on a lot of different products. But you can't do that at 2 restaurants. You can't do that at 3. You can do it at 10 because now I have buying power.
Right.
I can say, man, listen, I buy 35,000 cases of French fries at 50 pounds a case a year. I want a better deal. And they'll come back and say, okay, yeah. I got you.
And that's another thing, like when people, they only have one restaurant, they gotta deal with different prices. But, obviously since you expanded, you're having more volume, and so you get a better, cheaper rate. But like, what did you do during those years that maybe you didn't have that rate? Obviously, you can't go to the grocery store and buy your food there. That's not going to work. But, what kind of key suppliers would you recommend, or how do you find those key suppliers?
Yeah. So the smart, and I'm not talking about on my side, the smart people on the sales side are the ones that identify the people that need help and that they feel like are going to grow. Right. I'm sure doing these podcasts, you've probably talked to people that you sit down with them, and in the first 5 minutes, you're like, man, this guy is nowhere near as sharp as I thought he was. It's like, and you can just, you can just tell. Or you sit down with somebody and you're like, holy shit, I had no idea this guy knew this much about the industry, or that he worked this hard, or that he did, whatever it is. Like you can just tell that. And salespeople are in that exact same boat. They'll sit down with somebody and they'll say, all right, I think this guy's got some potential. I think he's going to grow. So what they would do is they would work out the best deal that they possibly could on what's called street sales. So your street sales, meaning I'm selling you, what everybody else can buy. I'm just trying to get you the best possible rate I can. And then once we got to, I want to say probably 5, maybe 6 restaurants, then we went into contract sales. So now instead of me saying, so burger costs $2.50, ground meat for our hamburgers costs $2.50 a pound. Well, during the course of the year, that fluctuates. When I was on street sales, during November and December, all beef across the board, steaks, hamburger goes through the freaking roof. Why? Because everybody's celebrating, right? Everybody's going out to eat. It's the busiest time of the year, so everybody wants to make the most money they can. Back then, we were seeing that increase, and it was killing us. Now that we're 10 restaurants down the road, we sign contracts to where I pay the same price. I pay a little bit higher during the summer than what the average person does, but I pay way less during the winter when everybody else sees these increases. Same thing with chicken, same thing with fish, same thing with French fries, same thing, all this stuff. So, but I didn't even know that as a guy, as a brand new restaurant owner in 2010 with one restaurant. So it's that education, man.
Gotcha. So, and with all that experience, you have accomplishments. And it says that, in 2018, you were named the Restaurateur of the Year by the Greater Houston Restaurant Association. So what did you do that year in specific that kind of set you apart than the other years working?
I relate that very much to the NBA. So you've got a Rookie of the Year, right? And then before somebody wins MVP, they've got to put together a few years, right? Like you look at somebody that goes out and they're the top scorer, or they have the most assists, or they become a captain of the team, or they go to an all-star game, right? So you're not going to get, you will, knock on wood, but I don't think you're ever going to see a first or second year player being the MVP of the league. It just doesn't happen. So what happened with me in 18, I'm 8 years in, my first restaurant was in 2010. We opened a restaurant consistently every year for 7 years, and they were successful. And what I call successful is not necessarily getting an article in the paper or getting your name out there. It is people butts in seats. It's people walking through your door, getting good reviews online. Those the 4 walls marketing That's what makes a restaurant successful.
The rest will take care of itself, kind of. Yeah.
You can have the number one. There was a guy here in town, and he opened up a couple restaurants that were nationally recognized, and it was the press was through the roof, and everybody loved it, and we thought everybody was going to the restaurants. Well, 6 months later, the 3 restaurants they had were closed, and everything fell apart because even though you were this flash in the pan. You didn't have the experience. You didn't have the substance behind you to make everything successful. And I think that's what we were, fortunate in doing. We hired the right people. We opened the restaurants that were financially stable, and then we started to get recognized. And in 2018, my wife and I were recognized as Restaurateurs of the Year, which was awesome. And I can't minimize the support side either. She was there every day with me, before we were married, before we even engaged, for God's sakes, working behind the bar and being a busboy and being a hostess and doing all those kind of stuff. So you really got to find somebody that will support you, because no matter what it is that you're doing, if you're working 72 hours a week, that means you're not spending as much time at home as you probably should. Mm-hmm. So if that person doesn't believe in you also, then you're going to find yourself in a tough spot.
Gotcha.
So, you're going to be alone.
Right. So you've mentioned a lot of people, around you. How important is it to have your neighbors on your side and kind of knowing who's around you and knowing your true personality? Because you mentioned a lot of people that come in and they don't really know who's around them. They're not going to certain restaurants and like meeting people in person, having that friendly conversation versus, you're seeing them maybe on Instagram or Facebook. But, in person, what's that difference?
Yeah, I think, I don't think, I know, you see this buy local, right? This big thing that comes out, buy local. I try to hire people that live in the neighborhood. I try to, and not only servers and bartenders and bussers, I'm talking about managers. I want people that are involved in the community. If people call me up, and it happens absolutely every single day, all the time, people will call up and they'll say, hey, we've got a fundraiser that we're doing down here, and we'd really like for you guys to make a donation. Absolutely. Next time you're in the restaurant dining with us, talk to the manager. They'll get you a gift certificate on the spot. Call me up. I'll tell you to come in. You're in the restaurant. I got you, no problem. You need a $100 gift certificate? Done. We do a lot of dinners, 6, 8, 10 people, chef's dinners with wines. We give them to auctions. We really support Casa de Esperanza, which is for children that don't have parents, don't have homes, from 0 to about 6 years old. After a 6-year-old, it's Boys and Girls Country, which is out west, northwest. They take kids from 6 all the way through high school, and then after high school, it's Big Brothers Big Sisters. So that's what we really focus on as a big picture.
And you served with Casa de Esperanza, right?
Yep. Yeah, I'm on the board for Casa de Esperanza. I was in Big Brothers Big Sisters when I was my senior year in college, and for the first few years after I graduated, because I didn't have any kids, so I had some opportunities to, mentor and kind of donate my time, which I believe is the most valuable thing that you have. First of all, but we can talk about that later. But I've always tried to be involved in those things, and then beyond that, it's local. Hyper local, the elementary school down the street, giving kids $5 off cards to give to their parents when they go out to eat, making sure our kids menus are awesome. We do kids eat free days so that the parents come out and the kids can eat for free while they're out there playing on the green space. Again, hyper local is the small organizations, the schools, anybody who dines with us that is trying to support something in the community, we're there for. So we want to be helpful. We want to be a part of the neighborhood.
Yeah, and you're being an asset to the neighborhood. So I love hearing that. And also, so I want to kind of go on like an agree disagree type of segment. And so, coming with if you fire an employee, would you even consider rehiring? Because Charlie Trotter did reference, hey, I have fired people and they have come back and been better than they were before, and that's almost kind of like maybe with like marriage too. Say you get caught up doing something you're not supposed to be doing, but then you come back the next time and you come back stronger. And so, how would you say that goes?
For me, it is absolutely. So people go sideways all the time, right?
Yeah.
Some people can't control their alcohol and they go through rehab and they figure their life out. Some people do the same thing with drugs. Some people
Everybody has their own addiction.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's
addiction to a person, is an addiction to a substance, is it, whatever it can be. So, there are very few things that you do. So when we term somebody, we call it terming. In our HR system, we have a hireable, not rehirable. And if you're rehirable, that means you left, you turned in your notice, you worked out your notice, you were a good employee, you went on to something else, and then you decided it wasn't for you and you came back. That's a super easy one, right? Okay. If you no-show for a couple of shifts, and we call it job abandonment, and you're gone.
That's unacceptable.
I see it as unacceptable. We put them as not rehirable. I'm the one that reviews it, right? So the GM will come to me and say, hey, Dylan was a great employee for a long time, but he got a little sideways with this girl and they moved to wherever and he just left without doing anything, but now he's back and they broke up, whatever the situation. And he goes, but I really like this employee. I want to give him another shot. And I'll say, yeah, absolutely. So I go into the HR, I uncheck that box, and then you're able to rehire that person. So it's all based on your Social Security number, your data, that it says not rehirable. So you can't even hire somebody without changing that code. So then I go back in and say, all right, you know what, we'll give this guy a shot. I'll uncheck it. And then, a lot of those guys are great employees. We've also had ones that we let back and they did the same thing. First time, shame on you. Second time, shame on me. you know how that goes.
Right. So another question is, they say failures are worth more than a success. So obviously starting up your company, what did you find out that the big failures that really helped you propel your company?
So my dad told me very early, he's like, you can screw everything up. You can make the wrong buying decision over here. You can make the wrong hiring decision over here. The only fatal decision is running out of money. So if I buy something, let's take these cups, for instance, right, that have our logos all over them.
Way too tough, by the way.
Yeah. If I go out and I buy these for $50 and I try to sell them for $100, everybody's going to look at me and go, you're an idiot. Like you never should have paid that to begin with. But if I go out and buy them for $5 and I sell them for $50, now I look like a rock star, right? We've all made those decisions. We've all overpaid for something. We've all, asked the person out that probably wasn't the best,
Right.
probably wasn't the best for us, but you live and you move on. And as long as you're thinking about the employee first and the guest first, then all of these decisions kind of work themselves out.
Okay. And so how would you use customer satisfaction kind of to fine tune, your business?
Well, people vote with their wallets, period. So somebody can write.
Well said.
Somebody can write a review on our restaurant that's a 5-star and it's glowing and everything is wonderful, and they never come back to the restaurant. Or somebody can write a 1-star review and they tell us everything we did wrong. We call that person up, we get in contact with them, we find out what it was that they didn't like, we get them back in, we make sure everything was right. That's the valuable customer. Right? The person who I would much rather you tell me in person what went wrong so that I can fix it. And that's what I like about being a neighborhood restaurant as opposed to, being out on I-10 at Beltway 8 and, you've got all this traffic around and you've got a bunch of visitors coming through town and you're never going to see them again. Where we are is, our regulars are 2-3 times a week. It's not 2 times a month. We see these people all the time. So if something goes wrong, they just tell us. Right. So I would much rather have that
personal level.
Yeah, but these people that leave the 1-star review that we get back in, those are people that have become my friends. Those are people that are, they're the ones that are there 3 times a week because we took the time to fix it, and there really was something wrong, right? We really did screw that up. So I'm glad we got you back in, and then you move on. So, the whole analogy of the guest is always right. A lot of people don't necessarily understand what that means.
The power of it.
It's the power of the wallet, right? The guest is right because they're the one who's paying your bill. They're the one who's paying the salary of the server. They're the one who's paying all these people. So in their mind, they're 100% right. It's just where does that intersect? Like how can you come to an agreement to say, man, I really did that wrong, man. I'm sorry. Let's make it right for you. So, and is that buying something? Is that inviting you in when we're on an hour wait and you don't have to wait? We get you your favorite table right away, which is probably, for somebody who values their time, that's more valuable than $100 meal. I can get you your favorite table on a Saturday night with the live music playing over in the corner. I'd take that 100%. I'd much rather have that than you comp my meal. So, but when I open my first restaurant, I'd probably rather have you comp my meal.
I hear that. So transitioning to like sports, obviously, you love sports right here. And you played football, wrestling, rugby, and earlier in the interview, you mentioned that some people are satisfied with opening their restaurant. They're chilling. They don't want to deal with other management. But that mindset of I think your mindset comes from more of sports than anything, and that's a testament to the previous one I just had too. Jeremy Thigpen, he was a Rice football player, but he was
all conference center.
Yeah. So you being at Purdue, what did you take from those sports, and what lessons did you learn?
For me, I look at sports in a couple different ways. So first off, I look at a golfer, right? It is not a team sport. You are the individual. You're out there on the course. You are trying to make yourself better every single stroke. Every time you go out there, you're trying to do something better or different than what you did before.
It's resisting complacency.
There you go.
All paragons of grit. That's what that is, yeah.
But you're not counting on anybody else. It's you. It's just you. It's you, a stick, and a ball, right? So it's just you. You don't have to count on anybody else. When you're part of a team, whether it be, wrestling's a little bit different, right? Because you're out there one-on-one, but you're trying to win as a team. Football is 11 guys on the field at one time, and if you don't do your job, there's a good possibility that they're going to score on you, right? Or something negative can happen if you don't keep up your end of the bargain. So, fortunately, I've had an opportunity to look at it from, a lot of different, look at business from a lot of different angles and say, I want to build a team. So, going back to that exit interview that I had when I left Grand Lots Cafe, great company, by the way, Cheesecake Factory. I really like what they're doing. I enjoy their food. I like the restaurants that they build are beautiful, all these things. So I'm leaving, and I did the exit interview, and they asked me all my questions, right? So I asked him, my director of operations, I said, well, what's the hardest part of your job? Like, I'm getting ready to leave, go to another company. I'd like to be a district manager with McCormick and Schmick's at some point. This is before I knew I was going to go do my own thing. And he told me building teams that not only can work together, but respect each other. I don't have to like you, but I do have to respect you. I have to believe that you're doing your part. You're here for the right reasons. I might not like your personality. I might think you're cocky. I might think you're too soft. Whatever it is, I just have to respect.
You're getting the job done.
Yeah, getting the job done. And at the time, I didn't believe it. I'm like, are you kidding me? All the shit that we have to deal with, pissed off customers, purchasing, landlords, other managers. I'm thinking all these things. I'm like, of all this stuff that we have to do on a daily basis, putting a team together is the hardest part. Flash forward to me having 10 restaurants. I literally have 2 meetings a week talking about who the managers are, who's doing well, who's not. Can we move this person to this person? Take a chef over here because they don't get along with the GM. Just all the interpersonal dynamics.
Intricacies of it.
Yeah.
And you mentioned, we were just talking about, you just ran into the Houston Texans quarterback coach, and you said that he went on what was it called?
It's called a coaching acceleration program.
Right, and so you said that, that program is to understand the different types of personalities within the locker room, but for your instance, it's within the kitchen, within the management. And so how did you learn that to deal with, a soft person versus somebody that's arrogant?
Fortunately, in my career, I worked for a company that was based in Texas, which is sort of I tell you what to do and you do it personality, right? Mm-hmm. You either do it or you don't. It's, you're from Texas, you understand Texans. It's a very much get the job done mentality. The second company that I worked for was based out of California. California is a completely different mentality. It's a completely different personality. It's much more of a kinder, caring. What do you need? What can I do for you? When we would go talk to tables, they taught us this class, and it was called groveling. The class was called groveling. I hate that word, right? Yeah. So I walk up to a table, and you're supposed to get down on one knee, and you're supposed to say, what can I do to make your meal better, right? And the whole terminology of groveling was so that you'll
physically
say,
get down on one knee or
right next to the table.
Oh, wow.
You would get down on one because you wanted to be eye contact with the guest, right?
Gotcha.
Instead of walking up to a table and you're standing up and you're talking down to somebody, and you're saying,
what
can I do for you versus what can I do for you?
On the same level as you.
Yeah. So there's some really great lessons in that. I didn't like the terminology. I didn't like a lot of the things that went along with it because I'm this big tough dude that played football from Texas.
Right.
I grew up in Oklahoma. I come down here,
a lot of people think it's like service is servitude, and so I think they need to understand service is a career. And if you have the mentality of service is servitude, and you're kind of getting bitched to do stuff, then you're not going to last long in the restaurant industry. So
never will. You'll be angry. You'll be very angry.
So you have to let your ego, out the door. And so that's also a testament to you that, hey, I'm gonna let my guard down, and I'm gonna serve and do what I'm supposed to do. And it's living proof that, hey, now you have your own office. You've got 12 restaurants in Houston. I mean, that's just phenomenal. So
we're happy. So I say service is black and white, hospitality is color, right? I can drop a plate in front of you, say, here you go. Or I can say, this is the, almond crusted trout with a lemon cream sauce and capers. And, you really say it's delicious, great choice, all those kind of things. And that's what, that's what makes a difference.
And also, like, some of my audiences, maybe they come from poverty, and so they have a lot of experiences, but by themselves, and so they're not really coached, so they're left at a disadvantage. And then vice versa, you have people that are successful, and their kids are pretty much floating. They're just chilling, and so both kids are at a disadvantage. One doesn't really have a mentor, and the other is kind of, they've really never had a moment where they've had to get back up and fight again until their 20s. They kind of learn that lesson. So what would you say for those two type of aspects and two different type of aspects?
There's an essay, and I'll try to find it and send it to you. But my investment person with Merrill Lynch sent it to me, and they call it the rule of three, right? So my father was very poor growing up. He has become successful. What I do is I'm trying to take that success and take it to the next level. And then the rule of three, the third person came up and it was easy. Didn't have to work for anything, right? So they're the person that doesn't work hard. They don't do anything. And then the cycle starts over because their kids are they're not going to understand how to work hard. They're not going to achieve a level of success. And then the cycle begins again.
They have the saying that strong men create easy times create weak men.
That's it 100%. Like I said, and that's the rule of three.
Not towards Tyler, but you also have a daughter. How would you parent grit?
It's a good question, man. There's a book by Angela Duckworth called Grit. And
yes.
it literally talks about.
I read it. You told me to read it. I did read it. Yes.
It's it's very interesting. It was actually recommended to me by Jim Vo Fisher, who is the head coach for Texas A&M.
Right
here. Yeah, there you go. When I sat down and had an opportunity to talk to him, he recommended this book that he gives to everybody because he's dealing with all portions of society with the kids that are coming in there to play football for him. And it is very interesting how it talks about, what's the definition of grit? Is it just working hard? Is it working smarter? But it's the stick-to-itiveness. It's knowing this is where I want to get to. So how do I get there? Maybe I took the wrong path here, but I need to get back on the path.
And then once you get there, what's next?
Exactly.
So, and also in the book that you referenced, they say there's a super champion and there's a champion. So they have super champions, and so it says in the book, they tend to have parents who are supportive in the least intrusive way. Said one, and then they said they were supportive, but they didn't drive me. They didn't have to push me. Those were the super champions, the ones that excelled beyond. And then you have your champions. In contrast, champions have parents who are hands-on, almost describe their parents as most dedicated to their athletic achievements for themselves versus for their individual son or daughter. And so, you know, how are you trying to be that super champion parent of, hey, I don't really have to push you, but I know that you're going to get your shit done?
My dad told me, so my mother was my best friend in my house, period. Like when I got in trouble, dad would ground me, mom would unground me. You know, she was the, oh, you're okay, you're gonna be just fine.
The
you know, she
optimistic
was
one.
yeah, right. And my dad was like, he was the one that was pushing me all the time. But you know, the word champion has multiple meanings. I can champion you, meaning I'm your biggest fan. I want you to be successful, right? That's the term championing somebody else means that. I want to see you succeed. You can also be the champion, right? Which is, you know, I was on a state championship football team. I won multiple state championships when I was wrestling, right? I got to see that success. And for some people, that's enough. And you just stop. For others, you get that, and man, you want that feeling. You want that high. Like you want to go on to the next thing. It is. And then when you get that, it's like you were talking about, you have the helicopter parent that says, you're going to this camp, you're going to do this, you're going to do what I tell you, and this is how you're going to be successful. And for some people,
It's
that
suffocating.
works. I think
it's suffocating.
Yeah.
And like my dad did, I think he did a great job by not letting me learn on my own and the hard way.
Make your mistakes.
Yeah.
You know, make your mistakes.
Falling down and then getting back up versus, you know, falling down in my 20s and then like, how the fuck do I get back up?
How did that feel? You know, my dad said it to me all the time. How'd that feel? Like we've had some in the restaurant business, right? It's not all great, right? So I've gone through some bad times, and he's like, how'd that feel? Sucked. Felt like I got my ass kicked, you know? Mm-hmm. But all right, well, how are you going to make sure that doesn't happen again? So I tell people all the time, I've made every mistake in the book. 100%. I've made every single mistake. Maybe not every single one, but I'll get there. But I don't make them twice. Mm-hmm. I learn a lesson, and hopefully I can make sure that I don't make that mistake again. And that's why the next place is going to be a success, or the next opportunity that we will have will be successful, because I've got this, you know, this bag full of mistakes that I've already made, and I'm hoping that I don't have to make them again.
I gotcha. Well, that's all I really have to say for the restaurant industry. But you know, did you have anything else that you wanted to say to the viewers?
No, I appreciate. You know, I'm available. You know, I appreciate anybody listening to anything that I've got to say, and I really I have a big hope for our future employees, our future generations, that they understand that, you know, like you said earlier, service is not servitude; it's a profession, and the better you are at selling, the more trustworthy you are, the more likable that you are, the more successful that you'll be. There's a few industries in the world that are never going to go away, you know, and hospitality is one of them. So it's a great career to have, and but it takes some grit.
Right, it does. And anybody that's watching, you know, if you want to be successful in any field you want, feel free to email, you know, whoever you want. And so, like, for me, I found out when I had a question, instead of just like thinking of it and then just like forgetting it, email whoever. You can email Mr. Paul. I'm sure he'll be free to answer any specific questions. Don't generalize questions, because CEOs don't have time for that. Be specific. And so, but you know, don't be afraid. Have courage, and you got nothing to lose. So,
thanks for having me.
Yes, sir. Thank
Enjoyed
you so
it.
much. All right, that's it.